Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Old Fashioned Catholics. I'm Kevin.
I'm Nick.
And our guest has left us even
So
before
the show's
it started.
over. Thanks for
That's
coming.
fine. He was joining us from his Rathskeller below the streets of Manhattan. But, there he is. He's back.
There he is. Hey.
I was running low
Yeah,
He was
that
running
happens.
low.
on
It happens.
hydration.
On
So
the
we're going to
show.
introduce you to him in a second. But first, if this is your first video of ours, please like and subscribe. We have a bunch of other old-fashioned Catholic videos. We are two dads who are Catholic, who like drinking old fashions. And as you can see, I'm very much not drinking old fashioned tonight, but we'll get into that. If you would like to have a drink in your hands, this is a perfect time to give it a pause, and we'll see you in a second. All right, welcome back. So I would like to introduce our guest and ask him what he is drinking tonight. So I don't even know his last name. That's how fresh this is. This is Mike. And
Hi, Mike.
Mike, you may have seen him on YouTube. He has a YouTube channel called Restoring the Faith. You can find him on YouTube. That's how I discovered him, tuning into some of his videos. He talks a lot about current events, the state of the church, and politics, and how they cross over. And he also does some live streams, which are really fun to tune into, and has some great guests on his show, and just really awesome content that he puts a lot of work into, clearly. So that's Restoring the Faith. We'll put the link in the video. So welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
We're very excited to have you. And how cold is it down in that basement?
Well, I have a little heater by my legs, so from my waist down, I'm very pleasant. From the waist up, that was a little chilly.
That's
That's
awesome.
good. But that's what your beautiful looking drink is for. And
Yeah,
I am
what-
curious to ask you about that.
Okay,
What is
I
that?
didn't know we were doing this. I'm thankful. I have a half drunk Manhattan right now, and I made it with a bullet rye, and
Beautiful.
and I used what is the bitters? The Agorasta or
Angostura.
Angostura. Yeah, I use those. There it is. Yeah, that bottle right there.
Yep.
Yes. But I didn't know we were doing. I forgot. I dialed in late. Oh, you got the orange too. Yeah, I use the orange for the old fashions.
I just discovered this. I've only tried it once. So far, so good.
We don't have it up north, but it looks good.
Yep. And Mike did, this was very dad of all of us. So Mike did join us late because I sent him the link really late and didn't communicate with him all day today or any time yesterday. And so we're all just living our lives. And it's about the time we usually would start recording anyways, about 11 o'clock at night where we are. Are you central, Mike?
I'm central. Yeah.
Yeah. So we're all recording at 11 at night because our families are in bed and we can get some time away. And so we're here having a drink. So
Our
Mike's
families are
having-
temporarily in bed. At any point, they can interrupt. So
It's tenuous. Yeah. I
yeah,
get it.
it could happen. It's happened multiple times. So
Very true. Very
Yeah.
true. Nick, what are you drinking?
oh, just the normal. I finally got cherries. So I have the low end Evan Williams, and I have just a couple of cherries mashed up in there, and some simple syrup and Angostura bitters. The norm.
Nice. And your norm five or six dashes, right? You got a triple.
5 dashes tonight.
Five
Yeah.
dashes.
5. Yeah. Yeah. What
I
about
am
you?
going.
What do you have? What is the?
I'm going
clear-
rogue tonight, guys. So I meant to make a really delicious brandy old fashioned, which I haven't had in a long time.
Yeah. Oh, Wisconsin.
But I had no ice because I'm not at home, and this is not a fake background. I'm at this giant lodge cabin place right now for the week with my family, and it's pretty awesome. But there was no ice, so I went rogue, and I'm drinking some Hoshi sake.
Oh,
So it's a sake night. So I will be shooting sake, and it is not nearly as much alcohol as it looks like I'm drinking for anybody
Sure.
who's watching.
tell yourself whatever you gotta tell yourself.
That's a curveball. That's a
Mhm.
curveball. I used to live in Japan.
Are you serious?
Yes,
Yeah.
you did. Yeah.
We would drink sake every now and then, and I did little exercises in Korea, and then we would drink soju, which is like a glow in the dark thing.
And way strong.
It's yep. I don't really remember it that well, but
Just because it was a long time ago. That's all.
right.
It was.
Yeah, I was a much younger man at that,
Yes,
at that point.
yes,
Only one or
yeah.
two kids. Yeah, life was easy.
So
Have you had that, Kevin?
I have had soju. There's another Korean drink. I forget the name of it. That's like 10 times better. I'll have to try. My sister lived there briefly. My mom is from there. My mom was born there. But yeah.
Nice.
Nick, didn't you drink sake when you were in China?
I did not. I did.
That was a
Jerk.
bad joke.
No, okay. So we became Catholic in '08, and I was with a different denomination, and we did not partake of alcohol. We weren't allowed to, and we lived overseas for 2 years in China. And so before we left, we had to answer some questions. You jerk! I can't believe you brought that up. So
did you have bat soup while you were there, or no?
No, I ate dog though. That was it was.
Was that like chicken?
It tasted like you would assume that dog food tastes, because it came in a tear package, like tuna right now. You can tear it and it's just tuna in there. It was just a chunk of dog meat, like there was a bone, like it was just sliced and put in. They had donkey and horse and dog, but
So
our favorite.
They didn't try to sneak it in, like they literally sold it.
No, it was a thing. Yeah, it was in the grocery store. But my favorite, because we wanted to get a dog, and so we asked our Chinese friend, like, we want it as a pet. Like, where do we get a dog as a pet for our time over there? And he was like, oh, yeah, I know. So we got in the cab and we went to this, I don't know where in our city it was, but it was a pet store, a dog store. And it shared a wall with a restaurant where you could order a dog. And so you could either go get a dog as a pet or be like, we want that one. And then they'd cook it and you could just eat it next door. And I couldn't get my wife to do it. I didn't think of it as cruel or anything like it. So we bought a dog. We had a pet instead. And I begged her for the whole 2 years we were there, just let me eat him when we leave. Like it'll be, humane. And she didn't let me, so I didn't get to eat the dog. But anyway, the sake is just, yes, we got in trouble because on a questionnaire I had answered a question. It just said, have you ever drank alcohol? And I said, yes, in the past I have, but I have no problem not drinking alcohol for the next 2 years while we're overseas and abiding by the tenets of our denomination. And we got in a whole bunch of trouble for having said yes that I had in the past.
Oh, wait, hold on. I can guess this. You were on a mission trip for 2 years and you can't drink.
Yeah.
But you can invest in Pepsi.
Oh, yeah. But it's funny because it's not even that one that you would think.
Oh.
I'll tell you after.
All right.
Because I don't want to disparage people, but like it was just, people. It was just a unique, they raked us over the coals, and on the way out of the door for an hour being just raked over, like, why didn't you just lie on the form? Like, you caused trouble. And I remember just thinking like, well, cause you asked, like, and then on the way out the door, they were like, well, we're going to let you go to China, but you got to be good. And we're like, okay, we will. And as we were walking out, the head guy was like, don't be drinking any of that sake over there. And we're like, and it was funny. Like Kevin pointed out,
been to Asia, man?
Not even the right country. They did vodka like crazy in China. So anyway,
that's fascinating.
All right.
Yeah. Side note. Sorry, that has nothing to do with anything.
That's what this is all about, Nick. Mike,
True.
Were you military? Is that where you were in Japan?
Yeah. I was stationed in Okinawa for almost 3 years. Loved it. Beautiful people, the Japanese. Okinawa is kind of like the Mississippi of Japan.
Really?
It's the poorest prefecture. They call them prefectures, not states.
Sure.
It's pretty agrarian. People live longer. It's very slow pace of life.
So it's the poorest prefecture. Am I saying prefecture in Japan?
Mm-hmm.
And yet they live really long on average lives.
Oh yeah. Well, they eat what they grow. They eat a very healthy, earth-based diet. I don't want to sound like a hippy dippy. I was just in an argument on Twitter all day today with a vegan. So don't misunderstand me. I'm from Texas. I eat brisket, but these people have the longest lifespan in the whole world. It's also the birthplace of karate.
Ah,
man.
Yes. The Ryukyu Kingdom was annexed by Japan at some point, but it was an independent kingdom. A lot of history there.
Were you on base, or did you get to go off base a lot, or?
We were very lucky. We applied to live off base, and we did. Nice. So all of our neighbors were locals, and we learned a little bit of Japanese, not really, but got a better appreciation for it. I started thinking in yen. I got paid in dollars, but then I would translate into yen and stuff. And it's also a very cash-based society. Like we're very cashless. I don't even carry cash in the States, but in Okinawa, you don't swipe your card anywhere for anything. It's all cash. So,
Yeah.
or at least it was. I don't know. I was there 10 years ago, more than that. Oh goodness, 12 years ago. But it was. We liked it.
What branch?
Marines.
Marines. Sick. And now, are you retired from the Marines, or are you still part of the Corps?
That's a little dicey.
Okay.
Okay. Next
Fair
question.
enough.
Next question.
Moving along here.
I don't want to be charged with sedition.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You won't be.
Not for this show, but
Yeah,
for
no.
maybe other stuff.
So
That's
how
great.
long have you been doing your Restoring the Faith media, and what was the impetus for you starting it? Like, how did that brainchild form?
We started 18 months ago. There were initially 4 of us, and then there were 3, and then there were 2, and I'm just the one that won't stop.
So it was you and 3 other buddies. You
Mhm.
guys were doing it, and now it's down to just you.
It's just me. Yeah.
Only 18 months ago, though?
Yeah.
Oh, my
18
God.
months.
There's clearly, I mean, you clearly have a following. I mean, it's not an insignificant number of people that are tuning into your stuff that you're putting out. Did you expect that kind of response when you were doing it, or was it just
No,
hey,
never. I initially thought, look, I'm a dad like you guys that just wanted to get on a video with some other dads at night and talk about dad things. I never thought it would turn into what it has. So
wow, man.
Crazy. That's nuts. And there's so much content that you've put out in 18 months. I thought it had been around longer. That's crazy.
Yeah, I guess I did too. I just thought you just kind of been doing it for a long time. And
So then
are you trying to put up? Oh, go ahead, Nick.
No, go ahead. Yeah, finish.
Oh, I was just gonna say, do you put out a video? Is it weekly or every other day, or what's your kind of schedule?
it's honestly just ad hoc. I mean, I really love it. It's a passion project. This might sound a little weird, but this is one of the ways that I feel like I can tithe to the church, because I put a lot of money into it. And I just care deeply about the direction of the church and the restoration of all the beautiful things that we just don't spend a lot of time thinking about. So there are some weeks where I'll do 3 or 4 things with it, and then there are some weeks, like last week, I didn't do a single thing. I was on a long road trip and just couldn't. So
Yeah, man.
So you have to say, do you have a day job as well? Like you have something else? That you
Oh
do?
yeah.
Okay.
RTF, yeah. RTF is purely just, it's like this.
It's like
Yeah.
OFC.
Mhm.
OFC in the house.
Right.
I don't know.
That's right.
No. Only far
RTF.
lower caliber.
All these 3-letter acronyms.
Yeah, that's
Well,
crazy.
when we started, we thought, hey, maybe there's a possibility that we could someday build something that, could sustain one of the 4 of us full time. And
Sure.
we were thinking like, oh man, if one of the 4 of us could work this full time, then the other 3 could parachute in, and this could be so great. And then it just was, life gets with you. One of the guys who started with us, just had his 4th kid in 4 years, and changed
God bless him.
jobs and had to buy a house and all this. So life comes at you, and then you're just like, why am I doing this stupid podcast? It's like one more thing to worry about. So
Wow, that's really remarkable. So do you, your other 3 compatriots who are with you on it, do you ever have them parachute back in, or do you guys ever talk about that?
I would love to. I think, 1 or 2 of them might be open to it. One for sure is just kind of soured on the whole experience for various reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would love that. And I love having guests. I love having people. I try to get people to come into the studio as well. I mean, as you guys know, it's much easier with your like dynamic duo here than to try to go solo, but
Right.
no,
yeah, but I've been thinking about going solo for a long time. So
Yeah, it's because he's racist.
we're on the. It's always that. It's always that you pull.
Okay, no, you guys, seriously. I thought of this question, and I think we should all answer it just for fun. So, each of us, your favorite bishop and why, and in the country or in the world, it doesn't matter. And you get 1 minute.
Does he have to be alive?
Nope. I mean, if you're gonna go Fulton Sheen, that's fine. You can do it. He does not have to be alive. And if it's not Fallen Sheen, then I'm very curious to know who it is. Do you want to go first? It sounds like you already know.
You should go first.
Oh, well, it's your show. I have to abide by your rules, but I would prefer not to go first.
Amen. Okay, well, that's fine.
All right.
Kevin.
I will absolutely go first. Now, my bishop in question is actually a cardinal, but he's still a bishop. So his name is Cardinal Tagle, and he is the Archbishop of Milan in the Philippines. And I had never heard of him. I had never seen him. And he was one of the main speakers in 2015 at the World Meeting of Families in Philadelphia. We got to attend it. And, it was an amazing week. It was a week where, of course, Pope Francis was there, but super low key, the incorruptible body of St. Maria Goretti was down the street while we were there. And so people just, hey, did you know St. Maria Goretti's in this church down the street for like a few days? So you got to go see St. Maria Goretti. Anyways, and this amazing experience, one of the main speakers was Cardinal Tagle from the Philippines. And the entire thesis of his talk was that through the wounds that we have in our own lives, we are able to reach out and heal other people. Like through the actual wounds of our lives, like our own brokenness can be used. And it was crazy. I'd never heard it put that way. And I was like, this guy's amazing. He was really cool. So Cardinal Tagle's my vote.
Cardinal Tagle. Do you want to go next, Mike?
Sure. Well, I think I will answer this question with Charles Borromeo. Saint Charles Borromeo is probably my favorite bishop. I believe he's the patron saint of bishops in general. He was around during the Black Plague. And that's very timely for us today. Yeah. Because we're reacting like we have the Black Plague, but there's just no pathogen that's anything like the bubonic plague. But Charles Borromeo was somebody who reacted in a truly Catholic way to a pandemic, unlike most of the bishops in the United States. Because today what we have seen is that the people who are dying of anything, but even of COVID, let's say, are in desperate and urgent need of the sacraments as they make their way into the afterlife, and they are denied those sacraments out of this supposed safety of their bodies. Borromeo was the opposite. He wanted to get the sacraments out to the people as quickly as possible because he saw that people were dying. And so he took the mass to the streets and to the street corners. And they were very innovative. Back then you could only receive Holy Communion on the tongue.
Right.
And they didn't understand, virology or epidemiology, certainly not even cellular biology, but they did understand that if you were, touching up people's mouths, that could spread the bubonic plague. So they came up with these golden tweezers made of pure gold to touch our Lord. It's either the priest's hands or these golden tweezers, and they would use these golden tweezers to drop the sacrament into people's mouths. So they were very innovative. They also kind of had like face masks that they would use for the anointing of the sick and whatnot. But anyway, he was one of the only one. When a lot of Europe was closing down, he was staying open, and he never got the plague, and he was in direct contact with it his whole life. So I think that's pretty miraculous. But anyway,
where was he? Where was he, Bishop?
I think he was in Milan, Italy. I know he was somewhere in Italy, but I think it was Milan. Archbishop of Milan.
Oh, side note, I accidentally said Milan in the Philippines. I think it's Manila, I think is what I meant to say. Sorry.
In Manila.
I think I said Milan. Sorry about that.
You did. But I was thinking like, there's two. There's two.
No,
Milans.
Manila. It's Manila. Wow, what an idiot.
There could be two Milans. That's fine.
So, man, Charles Borromeo, not a bad vote.
I didn't know that at all. I didn't know that.
That is way more than I've ever read or heard about St. Charles Borromeo.
Yeah, that's amazing. Did you grow up Catholic, Mike?
No, I didn't. I'm a convert.
Okay, what were you before you?
Every time, Nick, every guest is a convert.
We are not screening our guests well enough. No, what were you? What denomination were you?
I don't know.
Okay.
We were like one of those random ones, and then we would change as the wind changed and whatnot, and it was just kind of like, anything goes.
Okay.
I
heard
was
of that one.
baptized. I was baptized Presbyterian, but when I was a kid, I went to Baptist school. Mainly, I went to public school. I went to public university, and discovered the faith at university, and met my wife there as well. And actually, our second date was my confirmation and first Holy Communion.
That's awesome.
And
Yeah,
I
and
had
then
stalked her on Facebook. This was the early days of Facebook, where in order to have a Facebook account, you had to be a college student.
Holy
And
cow.
this was like 2005.
Yeah.
And anyway, I met her, and the only thing I wanted to know about her was she Catholic? And I suspected she was, because she's Latin, and she was. And I thought, okay, well, we're gonna get married. And that was it. And
Oh, by the way.
I guess she kind of had a vote in the matter. Well, she had veto power anyway, but she didn't exercise that.
Yeah,
So.
that's good. Okay, then if that was your second date, what was your first and third date? If that's
Our
your
first
second
date was, we played racquetball at the gym, at the college gym.
That's such
We
a
met-
jump, man.
I know, we met at a football game. We stood next to each other. She doesn't like the story too much, but
Okay.
in Texas, standing next to someone at a football game is sort of like a date.
Sure.
But I don't count
sure.
that. That doesn't count, because I didn't ask her to accompany me, so it wasn't technically a date. But anyway, yeah, we played racquetball, and then I just was like, well, we're getting married. What do you want to name the kids? And we picked out our daughter's name like within weeks.
It's awesome.
Oh my gosh! So she was right with you, man. She's like, yeah, we're just gonna get married.
Well, she was hooked. I mean, she was.
She
hooked
stood
on
next
me.
to you, so
I mean, and that means something.
yeah,
The
that's
greatest
more than a
thing.
ring.
I mean, foosball. But it was funny. On our second date, I was like, hey, let's go to confession, And she was like, oh yeah, let's. I haven't been in a while. And I was like, oh, well, perfect time to go. How long has it been? 5 years? I'm like, oh,
awesome.
okay. Yeah, that's a long time. But she was culturally Catholic and raised in it. And then, just kind of had to find a way. But there's something about getting married, I think, that and then especially when you get pregnant too, it just kind of makes you take it seriously.
Yeah. So what was your third date?
You're
then?
right.
If you're doing racquetball and then you jump to confirmation, then
Yeah, it's hard to. It was our wedding. It was our third day, right?
Oh.
No, that's not true. That's not
like
true.
the following week.
I just felt like there needed to be a sacrament in the third date. But
You only went on 3 dates. And
Yeah.
the rest.
yeah, that was it.
And the kids came along. And
Oh man, that is the best.
that's amazing.
So I mean, it sounds like as a college student, you were in rare air that your faith was central to your life as a college student. For many Catholics, that's not the case, right?
Well, I think for me, I can be pretty competitive, and also peer pressure is pretty powerful. I happen to go to a very conservative school, a state school, but a conservative school. Same school that Taylor Marshall and Abby Johnson went to.
Is that University of Dallas?
No, it's Texas A&M.
Oh yeah, man, cool school.
And I was in the right crowd, and lots of people talk about surrounding yourself with people who elevate you. It's almost like you should strive to be like the bad apple in a group of really great apples, because they'll bring you up.
Nice.
But there's always the chance that you'll spoil them all too. So don't be that guy. But I was that guy. I was the guy spoiling the people around me, and I was surrounded by a bunch of good people. And but they all knew Jesus. And I was like, well, I need to know Jesus too. So I went on a Wikipedia journey one night late, and I
Oh,
realized
it's about to get good.
I realized that I was baptized by, the heretic, who is a derivative of a derivative of a derivative of some king who wanted to get a divorce, and beheaded his legitimate wife and stuff. And I said, wow, man, that's pretty lame. And I want Jesus straight. I'm like, if these people think they know Jesus, then I want the real thing. And so I was like, oh, wow, I guess Catholic, I was convinced by the apostolic argument. And so the next day, literally, I didn't go to class. I walked into St. Mary's Catholic Center, and I walked in, and I'm like, I'm here to join, I guess. Like, how do you do that. I'm here to be Catholic.
And
the
you had
lady,
no idea what it meant to be a Catholic.
no, I was whatever you tell me is Catholic, I'm here for it, because I'm not going to let all these prots get the edge on me. Okay.
That's awesome.
And so
Mike,
then,
I love you. I don't even know you. And I
well, the lady behind the desk, she looked at me very perplexed. And I said, I would like to convert. And she goes, now, sweetheart, why? And I said, aren't you supposed to tell me that?
Yeah, I know.
I'm
Dude,
here.
horrible job at your job.
Why are you sitting behind this desk if you're?
That's
why
awesome.
do you want to put yourself through the rigmarole that I have to go
That's right.
through?
Haven't you heard of Catholic guilt?
That's crazy. Yeah, when we converted, I remember it was about, well, no, it wasn't a year in. It was just under a year in. I went to Father Mike and I'm like, you can, if it's okay now, you can bring out like the other book, like the one that you didn't want to tell me about. He's like, what? I said, no, it's okay. Like I trust. So if there's another, not like another Bible, but like just the and and he was like, no, it's all good. I had plenty of people on the outside ask why, but yeah, there's that idea that like, okay, why would you want to do this? But yeah, anyway, sorry.
It's great. I mean, we're just not really equipped to deal with converts in the church.
Yeah.
We're not equipped to deal with people who are interested.
Yeah.
In general.
Good point.
Like we're just not.
What's the same when we moved up to where we lived at the border of Canada, and it's in the coldest city in America. And when we moved in the middle of January, and it was like, it was 40 below without the wind chill around the time we moved in. And I remember being at the thrift store in town and we're like, hey, we just moved here. And the woman was like, why did you come here? And we're like, you're doing what? Because it's nice. And she's like, no, it isn't. And it's like the same thing with Catholics. They do this. Like, why are you doing this? Why won't you run? But
yeah, no, man. I know. And, as we kind of got into it and then we got pregnant within the first year of marriage, or within the first 6 months of marriage, I think. And then we were like, oh, I guess we better take this whole thing seriously, and I'm kind of a brand new convert, and she's a cradle Catholic, and neither of us really knew much. So we just started binging on, what I'll just call like kind of Catholic 101, like Scott Hahn and stuff, and read a bunch of his books and others. And then we were like, oh, this is great. And then we got exposed to the traditional Latin Mass very early on in our marriage when we were living on the East Coast. And we were like, oh man, this is great. Like, this is some treasure that's been hidden from us. Why did everything change? And then the Marine Corps sent me to Okinawa, where we had like the happy clappy, happy birthday masses and stuff. We were like, oh man, this really sucks.
So how long were you in Okinawa then?
We were there almost 3 years. To be honest, we started just going to the Mass in Japanese to get away from the American Mass, because the American Mass was so terrible. At least in the Japanese Mass, we didn't really know if they were saying anything bad. We couldn't tell. Because it was, it's the same.
That's fair.
Yeah. No, we did the same thing. We would go to the Chinese services, 2 hours long, and you had no clue what they're saying, but at least you were there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if they do this in China or not, if it's a cultural thing, but everyone had to take off their shoes, which was a very interesting thing to get used to. Take off your shoes to go to Mass. See communion barefoot.
Did you sit? Was there seating? Or
there were kind of normal pews. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
That's
Man,
crazy.
that's
awesome.
That's fantastic. Like, what a cool journey it's been. And of course you're still on it. And you have sixth kid on the way?
Yeah, number 6 on the way. Yeah.
Man,
awesome.
Congratulations!
Sorry,
That's
Nick,
awesome.
he beat you.
Jerks.
Well, it's not a competition. I know people that have been married for shorter amount of time than I have and have more children than I do. So
That's
they
awesome.
just have a tighter. I call it a shot group. They have a tighter shot group. But our kids are just our kids are like 2 to 2.5 years spaced out. Just naturally, that's just how God has sent them to us, and that's fine. But
awesome.
I wish we had more.
How long have you been married? What year did you get married?
We got married in 2007.
2007. Okay.
Yeah, so 13 years, I guess.
That's awesome. That's cool.
Man.
You guys.
Kevin?
Let's see. This will be our 9th anniversary this year.
Nice.
We're going on 20 years. Yeah, it'll be 20 years this August.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, you have me beat then.
Married. Yeah. Years of marriage. Definitely.
Nick, we need to know who your favorite bishop is before we forget.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well, so we became Catholic in '08, which isn't, I mean, we still feel really young. I don't know much about anything. Like I'm still learning a lot. I know everybody's learning, but I'm just a baby. So when we became Catholic, Bishop Paul Serba, it wasn't when we became Catholic, but not long after. He came to our diocese of Duluth, and I, for me, like the dad theme is really big in my life. Like I like just restoring the idea of a fatherhood in my own life is an ongoing process. And Bishop Serbo was this guy who could, if he met you once and you met him 10 years later, he'd say, "Hey, Nick, how you doing? I remember last time we talked, it was such and such. How are you?" Like we moved out of the diocese. We lived in the Caribbean for 3 years, and I was writing this curriculum, and I saw him randomly in the hallway at the diocesan center years later. And he was like, "Hey, Nick, oh my gosh, how's your wife? How's med school? How's that curriculum going?" Like I don't know. He was like what I picture a dad would be. Like it was just, he was such a good, and everybody said that about him. He was a good man. Like just so solid. And he passed away just over a year ago.
And dude, Mike, it was crazy. God called him home in a crazy way.
On the way to mass in the snow, walking from the rectory to the church.
On the first day of the liturgical year.
Yep. On the first day of the liturgical year, walking across, and he dropped, and they just said that he was gone before he hit the snow. Like he was just, yeah. So anyway, there are greater ones, and I just don't know them yet, but he's the one right now. He'd be my favorite bishop because he was like the dad to the diocese. Yeah. He was a good man.
Amazing.
Is
yeah.
good man, so.
Mike,
if I had to choose someone who's alive, I would be torn between Strickland and Tyler, Texas, and Filet with the Society of St. Pius X. It would be a tough choice for me between.
I'm not familiar with Filet because I'm not.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not.
Maybe or Bishop Schneider. Bishop Schneider would have an honorable mention, but
yeah.
One thing that I've really been fascinated with Bellarmine and Barmeo.
Yeah.
And both the B's, I guess, Bellarmine and Barmeo, both of them were alive and were saintly bishops at a time where most of their peers were just not. And both of them would rebuke their fellow princes of the church on a fairly regular basis. Yeah. And, it's funny. I think a lot of people who like to admire the crisis in the church today and say, "Oh my goodness, the USCCB is, they're in for Biden and they're alt left and they don't care about the faith and whatever." Those things are probably true, but it's not really abnormal. So
sure.
It's
there's nothing new under the sun. So
yeah.
And I mean, you mentioned those guys, and it makes me we are, I think, naturally attracted to those men who are willing to stand in the gap, or those men who are willing to make a stand, because that's what Christianity has been all throughout its history, is people standing up against the wave of whatever the culture and the times have been throwing at them. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny that you said. So I remember being in college. I went to a Bible college, and I remember at one point late in my process there, I had already gone through the atheism and just figuring things out and being a believer. But I remember a friend of mine saying, "Well, it just frustrates me because it seems like Christianity has never had an impact on its culture. They're always impacted by the culture." And at the time I was like, "Yeah, that does suck." And then that was 10 years later that I found the church, and I'm like, well, there's been one at least that I know of that has impacted everything historically that I just didn't know about, like that, like you were saying, Kevin, like that just have stood, that have, and that's not to say there aren't Christians of denominations that don't stand, but it just seems like there's almost like a tidal wave that this church has been. So yeah, go ahead, Mike.
No, I mean, it's such an ignorant thing to say that Christianity has been impacted by the culture. It's like, but yeah, it's like just read the history of the world
Right.
and sorry, is it okay if I smoke on this channel or no?
It is. It is
Absolutely. I'm so glad you're doing that right now because I can't in this building, but you can. So do it.
Cool. I have this half smoked cigar sitting in front of me and it's just like calling my name and it's like almost
Yes.
midnight at this point. So it has to be smoked.
Yep.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, I know. It's funny because I mean, the guy I know who said it, one of the most sincere guys. I mean, we're still in touch, and I still, but it was just the ignorance of history. It was just like, oh, had I known, I would have, I would have had a rebuttal. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting to see now. We're just in a unique time, and again, we on the show we usually just like it's guys hanging out and drinking and smoking apparently, and but there's also a place to say like we're going through it's not a unique time in history, but it's unique to us. It's unique to our generation. It's unique to me.
To us. It's certainly unique to us, and I don't mean to downplay it at all.
No, not at all. Yeah,
good point. And it is unique in some respects too, because it really is kind of the synthesis of a bunch of heresies coming at us at once. It's not like we're just dealing with the Arians or whatever, but I don't know. It's hard to be a Catholic in the United States, if you'll permit me to just be a little bit of a America hater for a second, knowing that
we don't judge.
I've taken oath to the country, and
you served.
Country, but
Simplify.
But the truth is that it's very easy to say something like Christianity gets battered around by the culture in the United States, because the fact of the matter is the United States is not, never was, and probably never will be a Catholic country.
Right.
But there's no way that you could stand amongst the permanence of Europe and see everything that was built by the Catholic Church and say something like that.
Right.
But in the Puritan Empire, which is founded on heresy, grounded on anti-Catholic bias, which continues to this day, it is easy because Protestantism is it's like whack-a-mole. It's a changing target. It's a moving target. It reinvents itself every generation because it doesn't know what it wants to be when it grows up, because it has no foundation.
Sure.
So it's like, I can for someone at a Bible college to say something like that, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because my wife, and I'm not a perceptive human being, but my wife is. And at one point she said, and the thing is, she loved her upbringing. She loved the college we went to, and she had never had any disillusionment or anything like that. But at one point she just said, it seems like everything we're learning is like 500 years old and up. And it
sure.
And she said at one point, she said, it seems like we've taken our whole identity as what denomination we were on, what we're not, and that's not Catholic. That's our, like, we're not these people. And it's a disconnect with, I remember the times like, in Duluth, like going to things with Father Mike and stuff, just being like, I didn't know any of this. I didn't know any of this ever. And like this wave of historical fact that just washes over you, that you're just like, oh, okay, well, I'm up then. Like I got nothing against this like tidal wave. Like if it was a couple of things, that'd be one thing. But like you were saying, like if you look at like the permanence of Europe, like you were saying, like if you look at the actual history of what has saved humanity, and it's just been, it's been this church. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And if you spend like 5 seconds on it, you go, oh, it was the church that held up culture.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, how are you going to argue against that?
And it's like, we don't really have a culture in the United States. And this
that's true.
That's
the
other
true.
problem. Yeah.
I believe that's 100% true.
I'm discovering this like in my mid to late 30s now at this point, and I'm just kind of looking around and I'm like, to the extent we do have a culture, it's like what our culture is: feminism and effeminacy,
right? Yeah.
And debauchery. Our greatest export is perversion to the world, and I've seen you mentioned Manila. I've been to Manila. It broke my heart. I was a 24-year-old officer doing a exercise in the Philippines, and I went to Manila, and I went to the cathedral and stuff. And I want to see all the Catholic sites, and there's a lot of Catholic sites
Yeah.
in the Philippines. I mean, they were a Spanish colony for 250 years or something, you know, so they're very Catholic. They're named after King Philip of Spain. Um, and I went, and the thing that really saddened me was, especially the younger generations are all little wannabe Americans. They're all, you
Huh.
know, they're all singing American songs, dressing in an American manner. They have American mannerisms.
Huh.
They're taught English naturally, but they're very proud of the fact that they speak, you know, American English, not, for example, the Queen's English or Australian English. And it's really sad because it's like, this is not something that I actually want to spread. I'm not very proud of that. You know, it's like, you guys have an authentic Catholic culture here, and American culture is destroying it. I saw the same thing in Japan too. But in that case, they obviously they don't have a Catholic culture. So
No, so having lived in China and then having lived in the Caribbean and just like a third world island, you see that in both places, like both places equally. And it's not to make a statement about the actual people, but what culture has been imported, like what they emulate in both of those cultures we lived in. It was American, it was Western American culture, but it was kind of the worst parts of it. It was the accumulation of wealth. It was the money, the house, the nice clothes, like all that. Like, and I remember somebody in Dominica, the island we lived in, saying that at one point. Like, it was an older person saying, "We're very frustrated because the youth." We live in this paradise, and you know, if you're hungry, you can walk into the jungle and you can just get some food.
Oh my gosh.
But our youth, they look around and they see really nice shoes and jeans, and so they spend every dime they make on getting that sent in, like, to the country, and like that's what we've exported. Like, it's not America hating, it's sort of just a fact, like that. Unfortunately, that is what has risen up and like has exported. None of the good that we do, and especially the church, so very little of what the church has done that is good ever makes it to anything. It's just all those surface things.
And the church has become very utilitarian, as our society has become very utilitarian too. I mean, we don't even really appreciate beauty anymore for the sake of beauty.
Yeah.
And this is something that, you know, continental Europeans really do understand, because they haven't really torn down all the beautiful things that the church built there. You know,
True.
we never had them. And
Yeah.
I mean,
We did not.
you know, the Puritans were oriented against beauty. You know, they viewed it as a sign of waste, and so in that regard, they were very much sort of like Judas. You know, I mean, when Magdalene poured out the perfume on our Lord's head and wiped his feet with her tears, you know, and it was the cost of the beauty and the gift, the to Almighty God. It was the cost of it that was in that moment that Judas's heart turned.
Yeah.
I mean, Scripture says in that moment he left and he went and sold our Lord for 30 pieces of silver. And so it was the offering of something that's just beautiful and expensive, luxury. And I mean, we have a couple nice cathedrals on this continent, but they're mainly in Canada and Mexico. They're not here.
Right. Yeah, it's funny. We had Bill Donahue on a couple of times now, and the last time we had him on, he was talking about the idea of gratuitous beauty, just beauty for the sake of it, like just that a certain mindset does see as wasteful, but that's what God does. All the beauty around us is gratuitous. It didn't have to be, but it is. But it exists because that's who He is. He's gratuitous in that sense. Like, He just lavishes, and yeah, we have lost that because it does. It gets utilitarian. It gets just down to the dollar, basically. What did it cost and what's it worth? And
Yeah.
that's tough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's I don't know if it's the cathedral or the basilica. It's in St. Louis. I got to visit it. It must have been 15 years ago now. But the ceiling is something upwards of 90% mosaic.
Mm.
And so you walk in and you realize that people glued squares this big onto this ceiling that is 300 feet in the air and covers, thousands and thousands of square feet. And it's you walk in, you just go, wow. And I was a punk 16-year-old when I visited there, and I just went, wow, this is incredible. And so you get a glimpse of it, and that idea of, we're going to make this beautiful because we can, and why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we try to make this beautiful? And they were making it beautiful because their faith in, compelled them to do it, and their religion compelled them to do it. And most amazing structures in this earth have been compelled by some religious fervor, unless I'm thinking about that wrong, but that's been my take.
You're right. No, you're absolutely right. Nobody builds temples to secularism, or to, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Other than skyscrapers, but
temples to reason. Okay, so in St. Louis, I've been there.
Is it a basilica or is it a cathedral?
It's a cathedral, I think.
Okay.
It's beautiful, though. It's absolutely stunning. And you can see, Burke's fingerprints all over it when he was Archbishop of St. Louis, now Cardinal Burke. They have these huge signs because they have confession going throughout the day. There's just so many confessionals. And these signs, I'll never forget, they say, "Let all mortal flesh keep silence. Confession is in progress." It's like,
that's awesome.
I love the wording. I just love the gaudy wording of it. Everything's gaudy about it, man. I love
Oh my God.
Well, no, and you see that though, like when you think of like, even when it comes to like theology of the body and like more to like the porn culture that we have, from that mentality of utilitarian, if you recognize beauty, it's mine. Like, come here. Like I want to appropriate that to myself because I've seen something that strikes me as beautiful and I want it for myself. Whereas again, like, because if you think about just humanity in general, God creating each human every moment that, conception happens, he's creating this beauty that populates the world, and it ends up becoming just, again, utilitarian. The human person becomes utilitarian. It becomes dispensable and disposable because of that. And that kind of plays itself out in everything you kind of see around us now, just that cold, utilitarian is the best word, I guess. But
Well, we're all infected with that mindset. So then what is the antidote for all of us?
Yeah, it's something that I think is a larger discussion about, there's a stated heresy in the church called Americanism. It's Americanism doesn't obviously, it doesn't mean, you guys know this probably, but it doesn't mean patriotism. It doesn't mean the American culture. It's a stated heresy of the church. Pope Leo XIII condemned it in Testem Voluntatis, and part of the heresy of Americanism, which I hate to say this as a half Irish guy, but it was a lot of the Irish clerics that came over here and wanted to
bastards.
Right. They came here.
Yes, what the fuck are they doing?
And they wanted to be Americans. Right. And they wanted to get along with American culture and ideology and especially the American political movement, which in some ways you could say is the cause of freedom, but in another way you could say is the cause of Freemasonry. And this heresy has not gone away. If anything, it's gotten worse, and we've exported it to the world, and we've exported it to the larger church.
Sure. Yeah.
Unfortunately. So now I think it is more true today in 2021, what your classmate may have said about, the church gets battered around by the culture. That's Americanism, going along to get along, trying to blend in. Let's be American first and Catholic second. You see it in China, the church in China. And unfortunately, the Vatican is brokering that deal and forcing the Chinese Catholics. But this isn't the first time they've ever done that. I mean, under the reign of terror in France, you had the Constitutional Church of France, which was basically you had to be a French citizen first and a Catholic second. So it's sad. It's sad, guys. I mean, it's like. For us,
and it's not new. I mean, it keeps getting repeated throughout history.
Yeah,
like
I was
You think
laughing.
people would have figured it out when it didn't work the umpteenth time?
Well, that's the thing. I think the other day I was laughing because people try to use the, like, if you don't learn from history, you're destined to repeat it. No, you're not. You're destined to repeat it. Like this, I don't think there's some like sudden enlightenment just by learning a correct history book where we're like suddenly good and pure and chaste and holy. And I don't think that happens. I think history repeats itself because it's humans every single time. And I don't know if and this is something I want to do an entire episode on, but if you've ever read The Gods of the Copybook Headings by Rudyard Kipling, I don't know if you're familiar with that poem. Oh my gosh. So whenever, not tonight, it's late, but when next time you get a chance, just read The Gods of the Copybook Headings. It's a poem by Rudyard Kipling. And he wrote back whenever he was alive, he wrote looking forward, when back in his day, when kids would learn to write, they would learn from these copybooks. And they would just, learn to write from, and normally each copy heading was a platitude. If you don't work, you die, those sort of things. And most of them were scripture based. And so he wrote a poem saying that basically the only thing that survives anything, and he talks about the Cambrian and the Carboniferous epoch and the first Flaminian sandstones. He's talking about like the entire history of humanity and the earth, that every single time what limps up to explain themselves again is the gods of the copybook headings, the gods of scripture, basically. And it's like, he talks about that your promised perpetual peace, that if you just surrender your weapons, that the wars would cease. He talks about if we were promised abundance for all by robbing selected Peter to pay collective Paul. And what happens is, though we have plenty of money, there's nothing our money could buy. But the third verse, and this has hit hard recently, but is just that that we were promised the fuller life, which started by loving your neighbor and ended by loving his wife, until the women had no more children and the men had lost reason and faith. And the gods of the copybook headings said, the wages of sin is death. And like, it's this amazing, like, prescient, like he just could see and put it in such perfect form that, like, yeah, this is what happens every single time. And it always will. And that it's not actually, and this is what I'm getting to with it, it's just that, as a question to you, Mike, especially, then knowing that this is a cycle and knowing that there's nothing new under the sun and knowing that brokenness is real, sin is real, death and hell is real, and so is heaven, and all the things that we know as Catholics, what's good? Like, what's the hope then? Like, what like, you're knowing all of this, knowing that actually it looks like things are on the decline. We're still hanging out, having a drink, smoking a cigar. So what for you then? What's good? Like, what's the bright light for you?
There's this book called The Soul of the Apostolate, which was the bedside reading material for Pope St. Pius X.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he talks about in the book is that we can delude ourselves into believing that we can change the world through our action, and we should make ourselves, this vessel of the Holy Spirit, and let the grace flow through us and maybe we can picket sign our way out of this, or maybe we can vote our way out of this. And we can't. We're not going to do that.
Right.
We're not. Just every time we voted we're not going to vote ourselves out of this mess. Okay.
Right.
First,
Yeah.
because they don't count your votes, but secondly, it's just so disordered. So I think what we really needed, we just need saints, and what is discussed in the book is that the difference between being a vessel of grace and being a reservoir of grace. And in the latter sense, a reservoir is just such an abundance that you're overflowing naturally, and that grace, infects the people around you. That's different than being like an empty vessel where it's like, one grace in, one grace out, like you're just a conduit, or, like a circuit.
Sure. Right.
Right. So, and I think that people who want to change the world, and we're all young and dads, and we want to fix the world, and we don't want our children to inherit this crappy planet that we have, but they will. And there's really, the only thing we can do about it is what we do inside of our souls, and then within the authority structure of our family. And what I hope for the restoration of the Catholic monarchy. I hope for an ordered society. I hope for a Catholic nation and all that. I hope for a restoration of Christendom. I don't think it's on the horizon though.
Sure.
I'm with you. I don't know that it's on the horizon, and I'm not going to try and predict that it is or isn't, but just the sense, just sensing the direction of things. But do you guys think, and this is something I've thought a lot lately, like, is it fair to say that at the end of the day, the only thing that really matters is what each of us does during the day and how we behave towards our wife and kids? Like, is there really anything more than that matters right now? I'm curious.
I mean, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I mean, this podcast is great, and this is something you can give to the world, and hopefully maybe inspire one or two people.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure you guys will get to the point you get emails and people saying, "Hey, I come back to my faith because of you," and you're like, "Wow, that's fantastic." But I'm not going to be judged on that guy.
No, right. You're not going to be judged on it, right? No, I think
it's like spiritual insurance, and that's a good thing. And and I get plenty of hate mail too. I get people to tell me that I'm going to hell and I'm a heretic and all this, and actually pretty much daily now at this point. But
awesome.
Atta boy, Mike.
People are peaches.
Yeah,
but
aren't they?
we are going to be. This is a good question though. This is a brilliant question, because we are going to be judged by our use of time, and we have to count for every minute. Actually, in our particular judgment, we have to account for every second that we spend on earth. And that's a scary thought, because then you start to think like, should I have a television in my house? Should I have video games?
It changes your questions completely.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And this notion of deliberateness, being deliberate with your thoughts, actions, words. Catholics used to pray before they would work and offer their work to God. And then at the conclusion of their work, they would offer a closing prayer for that work, and then they would move on to the next thing. And this is an outgrowth of monasticism, which is what really converts Europe, which is what really saves Europe, especially from barbarians, monasticism. And the families that would cluster around the abbeys and the monasteries, and they would learn about the rule of life, and they would learn about, okay, I rise at the same time every day, I fall at the same time every day, I have a morning meditation, I do these things. So even lay people would keep these practices, and our Advents and our Lents and other days of penance, which are not in the new calendar, but were celebrated for thousands of years, like Rogation Days and Ember Days, St. Michael's Lent. Though all those things were designed to help ensure that we are very deliberate with our time. I don't mean to filibuster here, guys. I just
keep going.
You're good.
I want to give the best answer I could possibly give, and the answer is, you're right. There is nothing else besides raising our families that really truly matters to our salvation.
No, that's good. That's the thing. I mean, everything else is so penultimate. It's everything else is so piffle. Like, this is, again, Kevin and I, we do this. This isn't even a ministry. Like, this isn't us like reaching out and like spreading like, this is just a chance for Catholic dads or Catholics, I guess, to get together and have a sip or whatever. Like, it isn't even pretending to be that, because why do we record at 12:03 a.m.? Because we raised our kids today, and we were there for our wives and died for our wives, and then put everybody to bed, and then we had a chance to just hang out with some people. I think that's great, Kevin and Mike, especially. Like, absolutely, this is what we're judged on. The joy for me is that, like, and I don't know you, Mike, I know Kevin pretty well, but I know myself that back, especially, so we had been married 10 and a half years when we adopted our first kid. We were infertile at the beginning, not anymore, but we were. And suddenly on a Friday night, we had 2 kids in our house in the Caribbean with nothing. And my wife was in med school, so she was studying 14 hours a day. And it was just me, 24 hours, a dad of 2 of different ages. And I remember very quickly realizing that, like, my first instinct was that God had screwed up, that he had made a mistake in trusting these kids to me. because he's obviously had a lapse, like and probably every parent feels that way. Like, what were you thinking? Like, why would conception happen? There's just the moment where your kid does something and they think you're Superman. They look at you as a father or a mother, and they look at you and they think that you're the world, and you realize that's everything. That this moment where you're inputting into your kid and being there for your wife and showing her how loved she is, it's more real than anything you've ever touched or experienced. You traveled the world, it doesn't matter what you do, those moments end up being more real than anything. And they probably are, like you were saying, like that's what you're judged on. Then you're judged.
You're giving me goosebumps.
No, really, because I think about Kevin and I have filmed like, I don't know, maybe 10 episodes now, and most of them have been guests. And multiple times now, even tonight before we started filming, Kevin's daughter, I think it was your daughter, right, came down, or was it one of the boys? They have high voice. But they sound like girls. It's no big deal. Your kids, I have tonight, my son, my 15-year-old was studying, and he had to go to bed, and I was able to say goodnight. Those are more real than anything. Those are the actual moments that as much as I, like Kevin, you're hosting an amazing event this weekend. As much as when I would travel and speak, I would want to be in these big events but I want to preach the gospel to all these people. Yeah, you go give it your best, but God still entrusted us three idiots to the kids, to kids in our homes, and to the wives that these amazing cherubs of women that he put into our lives. Like that's more real than anything that you'll experience. So yeah, I feel like that's probably
notes. I'm listening. I'm writing down notes. I have to, I can't let any of this go.
Tell your wife that
Nick, you're on a thread here, man.
No, I just think that hit really hard. Is just that because for me at the end of any episode, but at the end of the day, I want to know, like, what was the hope though? Like, why the F did we do today? Like, why did we go through because 5 kids sucks in a lot of ways, and 6 kids, holy crap, that sucks even more. Like there's certain aspects that are terrible about being a parent and being a husband and being a spouse and being a human. So what's the good in it? Well, and it's those moments where you're like, no, but for whatever reason, the creator of this world gave this woman to me, and gave me to her, and then gave these kids to us and trusted us. There's got to be good. It's got to be all good in a certain sense, because holy crap, look at what we're doing. Like, I don't know, that's just what hit me with your question and then your answer, Mike. So yeah.
I was gonna initially, in the first part of your point, respond about eutrapelia, which is one of the virtues. It's one of the 64 virtues. And eutrapelia is just a Greek word that means rightly ordered recreation, which is what we're doing right now.
Oh, nice.
And men need that. So this is good. Even if you're just doing this for yourselves,
gratuitous, yeah.
This is good. This is
which is the answer, Mike. We are really doing this for ourselves. That's it.
That's good. That's good. Well, I'm having eutrapelia too, so this is great.
2 things.
Yeah,
One,
and first, as a side note, I'm just extremely glad that we found you and that you're on tonight. So thanks.
Oh, well, thanks for inviting me, Kevin.
Thanks for saying yes. Yeah, one of the first episodes, if not the first episode we filmed, Kevin, at one point I'm like, we're doing this for whatever. And Kevin just said, well, I'm just doing this for you, Nick. Like that's what it ends up being, is staying up late and drinking, I guess, just for each other to hang out.
That's great. No, that's great. That's guys need that, especially after the stress of the day.
But the last thing, and we didn't prep you ahead of time. Normally off camera we prep, but we always you don't have to do it now, because I don't know if Kevin has more or whatever. But
no, and Mike, I think Mike's got something swirling around that we want to let him get out. But go ahead,
wait, no, go ahead. No, you go first, Mike. Oh no, here you can have it in the background. We always make our guests make a toast at the end of the episode, and that's how we close it out. It can be about stupid things, it can be about deep things, it doesn't matter. But you have a toast coming up, and we didn't prep you for it. But first, say what it is you had to say, because I know, yeah, you have something.
Oh boy, now both hemispheres of my brain are firing right now. I might have a misfire. So
that's all right.
They're gonna cross.
That's all right. That's all right. We'll edit the misfire, so it's fine.
No, don't edit. No, I deserve help.
We don't edit. We're too low budget.
Yeah, we've never edited.
All right, good. That's good. What is the name of the YouTube channel, by the way? Is it
Old-fashioned Catholics. Old-fashioned
Oh
Catholics.
yeah, I knew.
Well, I mean, it's we post them on Nick's YouTube.
They're just on my Nick Davidson, but it's under a
okay.
playlist called
You got a
Old
playlist.
Fashioned Catholics. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'll find you guys.
Yeah, we don't know what we're doing.
No, but to your point though, gosh, there's so much. This is why I have a podcast, because I get to finally talk. It's like after reading all these books for 15 years and learning the faith, now I just really want to spread it. But one of the things that kind of struck me while you were talking about, just sanctify your family, focus on your family. That's good. That's what we need to do. Two things actually. Well, three things. One is that why are women beautiful? And they are.
Yeah, right.
And the reason why they are is because a woman has to turn your head before she can turn your heart. And beauty pierces the soul faster than truth or goodness. I mean, truth and goodness are good, and they're probably higher goods. I don't know. Maybe that's a heresy, and I hope that's not. Maybe there is a hierarchy between the three goods, but
it's okay. It's unofficial.
But the truth is, to me anyway, when you have a Catholic family that lives their faith, takes it seriously, the real counter-revolutionary, the real reactionary, that in itself is beautiful, and that converts people faster than, lofty speeches on YouTube or whatever.
Yeah.
So I don't know. For me, at least in my limited experience, I do think that there's that. The second thing I wanted to say was just about you mentioned being with your wife and being with your children, and those are real experiences. It's kind of two parts on that. And the first one is that in the history of the world, like I guess from an anthropological point of view, the man has almost always done his daily toil within earshot of his wife. It's a very modern thing that we get in our cars and we drive and we listen to the radio because we're in a traffic jam. We have a commute. We go to our work, and then we come home and we're exhausted mentally or physically, maybe both, maybe one or the other, whatever. You come home and what you want is you want a hot meal and you want to relax. And the danger is that that's all your children see, because they didn't see you toiling all day. They didn't see you working out problems, exercising the virtues, especially of patience and fortitude.
Whoa, dude.
And so they think that to be a dad and to be a man is to be a couch potato, because that's what they see. And so we have to be, I think, especially mindful in this modern economy, which is based on usury. In this modern economy, we have to be mindful that the imagery that we present to our children of what masculinity is not that. And I don't know I don't know if it means that we have to work harder. I don't know if it means we need to, have careers in which we're working at home, or include, because you would have the family of doctors and the family of lawyers and the family of, leather workers and the family of blacksmiths, and it would be a family business. And from the time that the young men were like 10 years old, they were working with their fathers and they were part of the trades. And then you had these guilds and you had, and so everybody understood what it meant to toil all day.
Yeah.
And why it was worthy of the man's dignity to come home and have his wife serve him his dinner. But when they don't see the first part and they only see the second part, then that's it. Okay, one other thing. Sorry, this is a rant. This is a long rant.
No, go ahead.
But you said it was all real, and that is so true, Nick. That is so true. As Catholics, we are realists. Fundamentally, we are realists. That is, if you were to say what is Catholic philosophy in one word, I would say probably it's realism or scholasticism, but those are maybe interchangeable. We experience reality through our senses, and really it was Descartes who was a pseudo-Catholic who is the kind of the godfather of modernism of as we know it today. He was the first person to challenge the notion that you can trust your senses to interpret the reality that we live in. We're supposed to smell and taste and feel and hear, and we're supposed to experience nature and reality.
We're supposed to.
Have a grounding in it. And he was the first one to say, well, your eyes might be lying to you. A reality as you know it might just be something that's in your head. The real ultimate reality is thought and all this stuff. And now, and that, you know, and then I don't really want to bore you guys or myself with this whole thought train that led to now today you can wake up and say, oh, now I'm a potato, I'm a vegetable, or I'm a monkey, or I'm a woman, or whatever, you know, like there is no reality anymore. Yeah. But that all started back then, as there's been like a 500-year war on reality, but there's nothing more real than the emotions that you feel within your family, the experiences you have together, the feeling of gratification, I guess, when your children succeed, the feelings of frustration when they fail. Those are real things. Twitter is not a real thing. Twitter's not reality. Yeah. You know, even the fact that we can see each other on Zoom right now and it's super cool and all that, but it's still kind of like a digital. It's like it's like, it's not really real. It's like, I don't like watching Mass on TV. I never do it. I never, ever do it. I'm almost, I guess, in principle opposed to it. Because I think that we have to live in reality. Sure. And my favorite person on this, by the way, is a convert, and his name is John Senior, and he wrote a couple books: The Restoration of Christian Culture, The Death of Christian Culture. He was converted by, he read his way into the church by reading Aquinas, and he's very much into realism and the restoration of realism, and if you're homeschoolers, which I don't know if you guys are, but we are, and
soon to be,
great. Well.
We're teetering, so maybe I can pick your brain after some other time.
Yeah, well, I mean, some days our homeschool considers it an achievement if the children are fed, alive, not bleeding. And
it's my kind of homeschool.
Oh, so it's like real life. Great.
Yeah, right, exactly.
That's exactly what we're talking about.
If they say their prayers, if they do their devotions, and if they didn't kill each other, then it's like, okay, we had a good day. All right, let's do this again tomorrow. But Senior writes about the phases of education of your children, and he was big time into homeschooling and stuff. And you have like start with the gymnastic phase where they're outside and they're discovering their body and the reality and all that, and then you have the musical phase, and then you have the rhetorical phase. And anyway, I guess the long point is when you said that being with your family is real, it just triggered this whole thought chain on my end where I'm just thinking about, it is real. That is exactly right. That is exactly right. Getting ahead at work and the pecking order and the politics of work, that's not real. Accumulating Facebook friends and likes and all this social media crap, that's not real either. But your family is definitely real, because you're gonna be judged on that. And as men too, if you listen to Father Ripperger, who is a friend, he will literally scare the hell out of you, because
he does.
If your kids go to hell, there's a very good chance you're going to hell because of that.
Right.
So
yeah, I've watched him a little bit, and it terrifies me. So I don't. It's too scary.
No, it's just, and for me, it hits because, so I did for quite a few years, I got to travel and speak. I was doing like 10 to 15 bookings a month, and I was striving to have them all be, I'm trying to only preach the gospel that the church teaches, that, Christ said, I'm trying to I get to preach there. 500 people heard it. I get to go home tonight, and I did but then we moved to where we live now, up in the remote north of the north. And it's either this, like we're doing, or it's just me and my kids every day. It's just me and my kids every day, every day.
It all stopped.
Every day.
All those
it all stopped.
Things stopped.
Everything, the quantifiable spreading of the gospel, which is important, go and make disciples and all that. But there's something, what hit me actually while we were talking is just that part of the reason it's more real than anything I've ever done is it requires everything of me and nothing of these people in this house. Like like rightfully so, my kids, they don't give a crap at this moment. They just require of me everything. If I told my wife, like, if we start recording and she texts that the 1-year-old is awake and she's a doctor and so she has to be rested, then I'd have to bow out of the interview and I'd have to go hang out with the 1-year-old, because that it's more real because it requires everything of me. And speaking, that didn't require anything. It was all fun. It was good. It was all good, but it didn't require anything that I didn't want to give. And I think there's something about the family, like the idea that it's the school of love. Like it's the idea that it's more real because it requires everything of everybody, and it crucifies you but resurrects you at the same time. It's everything it should be, whereas everything else is sort of peripheral, and it's a little bit of what it should be. But I think marriage in the family is everything it should be, and it kills you like it should. So that kind of stood out when we were talking. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, and it really just means that there's nothing that's more important.
Yeah.
We, like, if we ever are in question, we can just come back to that. You know, it gives everything you two have just said over the last few minutes has just been confirmation that, you know, that phrase, the family is the cell of society, is even more true and more real than I previously recognized.
Sure.
And that, like, in a certain sense, it's just everything. Like, it doesn't matter how I succeed anywhere else, but what matters is what I do in that moment that I want to be short, or that I want to be angry or frustrated,
Selfish,
or just annoyed. Like, I think being annoyed as dads might be the most common emotion I feel.
Yeah.
Like, just being annoyed. And Nick, you were talking about Father Mike. One thing he said recently in an Ascension Presents video was that like, being annoyed at anybody, but for us in particular, our families, is a choice. Like, you chose to be annoyed by a situation or by something that your kids said or that your wife said. That's what it just drilled into me. It's like, oh man, I have a lot of work to do there, because that's really all that matters.
Well, like a few years ago, I remember at one point, Jesus, like, you feel the Holy Spirit, like in those moments of annoyance with your family, just being like, I'm not annoyed by them though, right? Like, you think you're in the right being annoyed by your wife or kids, but I'm not. So who's in the wrong right now? If God's not annoyed by them, then who's in the wrong? And when we were thinking about moving up here, canceling all speaking and all that, I remember it really, really at one point, really strongly, like the conviction of God just being like, very clearly one night on the way home from a gig, God saying, you know what? So many more people are better speakers than you. And so many more people are funnier than you and will spread the gospel better than you. But nobody will be a better husband to your wife than you. And no one will ever be a better father to your kids than you.
That's
so
good.
Shut up and go home. And I was like,
Dude,
okay.
that's awesome.
like just like the moment of clarity where, like, even if it's been tough, everybody's better than me at those peripheral things. But the only father and the only husband in this home is me. And that's a calling beyond, like, that's real. That's real. Like,
my wife tells people, she's like, I wouldn't do it again. Like, but I only have two options. It's either this guy or hell.
That's awesome.
So
and they're so even sometimes.
I'm gonna play this hand out with this guy over here.
Your wife is awesome.
She does say that quite a bit.
You married the right woman. That's true. I think actually, whatever's swirling around in your mind, we want to give our guest the last thought. So what do you got for us, Mike? And then we'll have you give us a toast.
I think that maybe the underlying theme of just what we talked about tonight is authentic masculinity, which is something that the culture desperately needs and that we as men desperately need. And, there's authentic masculinity, and then there's sort of the inauthentic version. And unfortunately, what I see, a lot of people who even write books and have blogs about masculinity, and they talk about, they boil it down to like having hipster beards or lifting heavy objects, or ordering your subservient woman around and basically being a tyrant in the house, or whatever it is, or being a fantastic outdoorsman, or having some other spectacular hobby and stuff. And I don't think that any of those things are necessarily bad in and of themselves. I used to run marathons, and I was in the military and try to stay in good shape. It looks like you guys are in good shape too. Those are important.
One of us.
You need to
Kevin is.
you need to be strong. You need to be able to carry your wife out of a burning building, to provide and protect. That's good. But provide and protect is sort of the essence of masculinity. And provide and protect implies a lot of things. It's a spirit of sacrifice, and that sounds like a trite thing, and people say it a lot. And it's almost on repeat. It's like, oh, you're gonna die to yourself and stuff. And it's like, I might actually take a huge swig of whiskey the next time someone says you have to die to yourself, because I just don't want to hear it, because it's so overdone. But the truth that people are trying to get at when they say these things, that I just are like, I can't hear anymore because you just hear it too much. The truth that you're trying to get at is that what it really means to be a man is rooted in the cardinal virtues, especially of temperance and fortitude, because temperance and fortitude govern your lower appetites. Temperance governs your concupiscible appetites, which are, your need for immediate pleasures that are in front of you, like food and sex, basically. Fortitude governs your more remote appetites, which are your irascible appetites. So these are the things like accumulation of wealth, or I want my Kansas City Chiefs to win a second Super Bowl, or whatever it is. And did I just dox myself?
Yeah, you did. It's done.
All good.
But you want more remote goods, and the out of fortitude, you get things like patience, long suffering, longanimity, courage, all the things that you think of when you think of a man. And those things must be cultivated. I can't remember if it was Nick or Kevin where you asked, how do we root these modern things out of us, or how do we overcome it? And, the answer, unfortunately, is it's a lot of work, because we're just naturally selfish creatures. Anyone who's ever had a toddler knows that we are born utterly selfish.
Bastards.
We are. We're just like so unlovable, just greedy little,
bastards. Yeah.
And if you don't rid yourself of that as a kid, if your dad didn't raise you to be a man, then it's even harder when you are actually a man, and then you realize, oh, I'm not a man because I play video games and I wear shorts and I like to lounge and I don't take myself seriously and I'm a goofball, and I'm more concerned about my own pleasures. I don't sacrifice for my family. I'm incredibly prideful, and when you start to go down the list, you're like, oh man, I'm a really pathetic dude, So I think the first step is just knowing what the virtues are. There's a whole virtue tree. There's 64 of them. Knowing what they are, learning their definitions. First step. Then you can learn the vices. Each virtue has a vice, or at least one attached to it. So obviously, the opposite of courage is cowardice, and but the excess of courage is foolhardiness. And so the virtue always lies in the mean. And so you can have an excess of something or too much of something. And, but that doesn't mean that we should be, I don't know, for lack of a better word, just like lukewarm, kind of Charlie Brown, wishy-washy, people will tell you, don't be an extremist with your faith, or don't be, you just need to be chill and normal and cool. Well, gentlemen, maybe this is just what I've read, but I've never come across a saint who was chill and normal and cool.
Right.
They're all extremists. Yeah. And anyway, just as it relates to masculinity and what you guys are doing, and I'm so glad that you had me on here. Thank you for having me. But, Eutrapelia is good. This is good that we're spending this time just talking about the faith and all this stuff. But what it comes down to really, really, really is physical labor is important, seeking the arduous, making good on your word, showing up on time, dressing for the part, meaning what you say, telling the truth. Like you can boil it down to almost any book of virtues, and it's all like kind of basic common sense stuff, but I really think that unfortunately we're all a bunch of effeminate little girls in this country because we've been raised in comfort and luxury, and that's what that creates. So like Nick, you've moved up to a place where I would die. That's what I would survive. But good on you, because you know what, you have to survive. I mean, it's like you gotta get even to just get the car started, I'm sure is like an adventure.
Sometimes, actually.
Yeah, it is. It's actually an 8-hour long preparation. If you want to start the car in the morning, you have to start prepping the day.
You run on this treadmill to charge it.
That's it. Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I mean, I guess I don't know. Maybe this kind of took twists and turns, but I just think that we have a crisis of manhood. St. Joseph was not a pushover. He was a man's man. He built houses by hand.
Yeah.
I mean, this man carried logs on his shoulders. Okay. He was no pushover. He was no stranger. And the horror of suffering is what defines our culture. This comfort-based culture that we have. And look, I'm sitting in comfort. I'm wearing this nice wool sweater. I got a heater
It is nice.
Off.
I like the sweater as well.
Yeah, it's really good.
Thank you. Well, with
very green.
And with the green screen behind me right now, it's a little sparkly because the thing is, like, I don't know, is that part of the brick wall or not?
Yeah, it's like you're like I don't know what the word is.
You're like a dreamy Mike.
Yeah, like you're not like
ethereal.
Ethereal, that's the word.
Am I in a Disneyland ride right now?
Are you or aren't you, Mike? We don't know.
Right. Yeah. That's right. But I mean, I guess my only thing, and this is an exhortation to myself because I'm literally like struggle with this every day. My wife and I were just walking around the neighborhood today, holding hands, super romantic. We never do that. And ourselves like, our life is so easy. Why are we even complaining? But finding ways to suffer and I'm not talking about like, I'm going to be a victim soul and stuff, like that's not for everybody. Be careful what you ask for. You'll get it. But yeah, I just think that as a 36-year-old man, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm saying, I've never really truly suffered. I mean, like, combat deployments and military training and, the stress of a high tempo, kind of Wall Street career and whatnot. I mean, these things are challenging, but you guys have traveled, you've been in Asia, you've seen poverty.
Well, I was going to say, Mike, like what you were saying about like embrace work. I don't know how you phrased it a second ago. It was a specific, it was reminding me because like when the fall happens, then that's the curse, like the idea that, okay, well from now on, work is going to be from the sweat of your brow. But, oh no, it was when Joseph carried logs on his back as his stepson ended up doing, like that idea that like what is viewed as a curse, or is just a consequence of sin or whatever, that you can embrace that and bring redemption. Like as a man, then you can say, okay, no, I'll embrace the work. Then I'll hug the cross. Then I'll take that when everybody else around me is like, especially here in this culture, is running from it and like doing, when the pandemic hit, one of the first things that hit me was like how terrified people are of death. They're like terrified. I will ruin the world's economy. Just keep me alive a little longer. Like that idea. And I was talking to my wife. I'm like, I think we do death wrong. I think, or at least the world, I think we've got death wrong because it's something we can run towards as us. Like we don't have to be afraid of it at all. And so that you had said that, like, it's something to the effect of like, embrace the hardness of work or the harshness. I don't remember how you phrased it, but just that idea that undoes the curse. Like that's what Christ did, but that's what we can do as well. It's like, no, bring it on. It's not abhorrent to me. Yeah,
exactly. And so many of these self-help books, they'll say that like, work becomes joyful and you find joy in work, and it almost becomes like not work anymore. And I'm like, yeah, it's still work.
Yeah.
I mean, like there's no magic pill. If you're in this for like some magic pill, you're like, oh, I'm going to offer up my sufferings and then suddenly I'm not going to feel the pain anymore. No, you're going to feel the pain. You are.
Yeah.
That's just part of it. You have
Maybe
to.
worse. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Well, yeah, your wife's still going to get mad at you. Your kids are going to still like poo on the floor and ruin all the things you paid for. Like it's still going to happen. And it's never going to be like, oh, that's beautiful. It's not beautiful. It's horrible, but you embrace it.
We just got our couches reupholstered, and literally like it took 9 weeks. We had no furniture in the living room for 9 weeks. We were sitting Indian style. Can you say that? We were crisscross applesauce.
You can say whatever you want, Mike.
Sitting on the carpet, and I had some very famous friends come to the house, and we were supposed to have the furniture done by that point. We didn't have it, and my very, very important, wealthy, famous friends sat on the floor with us.
That's awesome.
Good.
Couches. And then as soon as the couches came back and they were done and they're beautiful, and it's like it looks like a Ralph Lauren catalog, okay, like just big, bold navy and white stripes and all this stuff on the center white stripe. What should happen on day zero of just chocolate from the mouth to the hand, streaks down, and like before I could even Scotch guard the thing, it's like now it's part of the DNA of the couch. And I'm just like, this was a $2,000 endeavor to try to impress people in my living room and stuff. And now I'm like, so yeah, it's like, no, yeah, your kids, they shat all over your stuff. And you're just like, thanks.
Yeah.
Kid,
And they're not going to stop.
And then you realize that you being annoyed was your choice.
Yeah, it was you.
I know. My being annoyed was because actually, I think that was righteous indignation, personally.
Okay, fair enough.
I just pictured Jesus just being like,
oh, you think those couches are nice, huh?
He's like, Mike, I knew that was going to happen the whole time, man.
When you first booked the reupholstery, I was dying.
I know. Oh, yeah, exactly. He had that planned. Oh, and what's worse, it wasn't even my kids. It was someone else's kids.
Oofda.
Awesome. Well, that's righteous then.
Minnesota.
Oofda.
But okay, but you brought up the scamdemic. I can't let the scamdemic go. I have to. Can I say something about this pandemic thing?
And it'll give people a taste of if they go to your channel, some things they can find. I mean, we don't really weigh in on it, but you're free to.
Well, just what you said, Nick, is it's so true. My wife, Mrs. RTF, and I talk about this all the time. The faithless pagans that run the world.
That makes sense.
That's not unfair.
Yeah, that's what
they cling to life. They're so afraid of death. And I think ultimately the soul that is in a state of mortal sin, it's possible to totally kill your conscience. I suppose that the moralists say that, but it's also possible to have like a half functioning conscience that just is like limping along to the point where you can never be totally 100% unaware of your own mortality and the fact that your soul is dead. Right. And I think that most of the world that's sleeping around and doing what they do, that are in a state of mortal sin, are so afraid to face the ultimate reality of God that they will do anything. They will claw. They will kill if they have to, and they have in this shutdown. They will kill to stay alive just for a moment longer. And they think that they're just wanting to experience the world and running towards the pleasures, but I think subconsciously they're running away from the true fear that they have of death. Whereas, as you said, Nick, the Catholic response to death is so inadequate, what we've seen, especially in the USCCB today, because Catholics don't fear death. Right. You don't. If you're in the state of grace and you're doing your job, one of the moralists, I don't remember, it might have been the moral doctor himself, St. Alphonsus Liguori, was asked, if you were recreating like we are doing right now, and I see a pool table behind you.
I know. My kids were all over that thing.
If we were
on top
pool, if we had done our duties today, we made our morning meditations, we gave it our all, we raised our families, We we heard and assisted at Holy Mass. We do all these things, and we were playing pool, and an angel were to appear and say, you know, you have 60 seconds left on Earth, and then you're dying. I don't quote me, but I think it was Alphonsus Liguori who said, I would continue playing pool for those 60 seconds because I've done my duty and I'm prepared. I have
So
holy
badass.
confidence. I have holy confidence in
Holy cow, what a beast.
yeah, I know, it's beast mode. And you know, the modernists take that and hijack it today, and they're like, oh, you know, God loves you just as you are. He'll meet you just where you are. You don't have to change a thing about you. You do anything you want, and everything will be fine. And obviously that the Oprah Winfrey Dr. Phil version of that is bunk. And so and that's not what I'm saying, but what I am saying is that if you live a rightly ordered life, you don't fear death. And so this exaggerated fear that all of a sudden every ordinary in the United States, every bishop suddenly became an epidemiologist and a virologist overnight, and they knew how COVID was spread, and they could tell you how to prevent it, and they told you that my job, my duty is to keep your body safe from this virus. I'm like, no, your job is to keep my soul safe, dude.
Right.
Keeping my body safe is naturalism.
Yeah, there was something crazy about the wave that happened across the I'm not talking about in large, I'm just talking about in Catholic churches and Catholic parishes and priests and bishops. We could have another several hours discussion on just the things that were remarkable, and we could just go example by example by example, I think.
Well, yeah, and it does. It comes down to the response. I think looking back, especially in the church, again, this is not. And again, my wife's a medical doctor. This is not negating the fact of a virus being real. Like that's so beside the point. The
Right.
point for me was in all this last March is looking at people and being like, "Holy cow! Everybody's scared out of their mind that this might be their last minute." Like they're not prepped for this. They have not prepped for just, breathing out the last, like they're just not ready. And so in lieu of that, I remember seeing, and I can't find it. I've looked, some British guy, and he was like 75 years old, way back at the beginning when everything locked down, when the whole world locked down. Yeah. Some British guy, this elderly man, and he was saying how appalled he was. And again, you only take it for what he meant. So people, the few viewers we have, you just take it for what he meant and you exercise some restraint. But he was just saying he was appalled at the response of people of his generation, like 75 and up, because he's like, we've lived our whole lives. And he said, we've lived our whole lives and we've done everything. We've had an entire life and we're ruining the livelihoods of our children and our grandchildren so we can have a couple more years. Like, and how wretched that was, like that idea of like, just to grab on to a few more will ruin everything. And I think that was really telling, like in the church, especially, again, like, I don't know, the exact perfect response would have been, but I think we did see kind of like what's at the root of everybody right now is just
some of the saints too, like Saint Teresa of Avila really just grew to despise the world, and you almost get to the point. I had one of those days today, just one of those nonstop days. Everyone has them. And
we didn't even ask you this question. We forgot to ask you our standard question of your day today. So this is perfect.
Okay. Well, it was bad. I'm involved in some litigation with my company, and there's that, and we had another emergency today, and I lost a member of my family a couple days ago, and she died outside of the Catholic faith, unfortunately. It's just been bad on top of bad. And it was one of those days where I sat at my desk so long that, like, your legs don't work and you stand and you're like, I need to, this is why we walked around the neighborhood today. But anyway, my wife had a similar day parallel to me because she doesn't come down into the war room when the door is closed. And it was closed all day. In fact, it was so bad today that the kids brought me my meal today, and I set it on my desk or whatever. And I didn't even eat it. Like, I was just so busy. It's so pathetic. And so we were walking today and we were looking at each other, and I just said, I said, I don't know if I can say this, but I'm looking forward to death. I really am.
It's so good. So good.
I don't know. I hate everything about this planet. I hate the overarching philosophy. I hate that I see error everything I look at is ugly. All these people are just in you know what I mean?
That guy over there.
Yeah, right. Him. Exactly. No, yeah. And it got super specific. And Kevin, and no.
Everybody hates Kevin. It's fine.
No, but we looked at each other and we were just like, and she looked at me. She was like, no, you don't get to do that. She's like, no, I get to go first.
That's awesome.
Yes.
But in truly though, I think something, and I'm not sitting here saying that I have achieved the unitative, state with Almighty God,
Sure.
that I've progressed from the purgative spiritual
to the
state.
unitive way. Yeah. No, you haven't.
I have not. I have not done that. I just try to stay out of mortal sin. But I think that some saints who have achieved that, I think almost to a man, they all say they're like, I am so looking forward to dying.
Yeah.
Like I'm so looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it, And that sounds like a really weird thing in our culture today, in our American culture where people are clinging to life and everything. They're like, oh, the virus might kill me. I have to do everything. I have to wear my 14 masks now, It's like,
yeah.
Well, Paul said that though. Paul said, like, I'm kind of torn because I would rather die and be with God. I would rather do that. Like that is the better. It is much more better is the phrase he uses. Like,
well, even to bring that home, I believe in everything that's to come. I don't want to die. Like I'm terrified of death. I hate thinking about it. I think about it often, especially within the last year or two of my life. It's like it's in my mind often.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I think about it, I'm like, like it could happen right now. There's no guarantee of tomorrow. Like when am I going to die? I don't like it. I don't want to have to go through it at all.
Yeah, but at the same time, because Paul says that, he's like, no, I know it's better if I would die, actually. It's much more better. But I know that I would also rather, people know of, and for us, like the conversation tonight, and then you're ready with your toast, Mike. But just the idea that like in the last year, that's what I've come to the most is prior to these kids, it's actually, who cares if I die? Like maybe your parents cry and maybe your wife misses you for a while, but you're fine. It's no big deal. And you get to be with God. But
your wife would remarry. I mean,
like in a heartbeat, I have her name tattooed and people ask if she has mine. And I'm like, oh, hell no, there's no reason. Like she can move on as quickly as possible. But when you get kids, you're like, oh, but no, like if I were to die, then what would them? But I remember clearly during the pandemic, God being like, who are you though? You don't think I got your kids? Like you don't, like I could take your soul. You just make sure your soul's ready and I could take you and they'll be fine because I got them. Like I can, like you have your responsibility, but as long as you, like you had said, Mike, earlier, like if you had 60 seconds, as long as you make sure that you're good, then just keep playing pool. You just keep moving on and you're good.
Mm-hmm. That's not the time to figure out, oh, did I write a will? Do I have life insurance?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, straight up, man.
Which means I need to talk to you later, Mike.
Oh boy.
Right. You got something, Mike?
Okay. I slandered my own people earlier.
What?
I did. I talked about the Americanist heresy imported by the Irish.
Right.
I feel like we're about to start Lent, but one of the reprieves in the RTF house during Lent is the Feast of St. Patrick of Ireland.
That's great. Let's do it.
And so I want to make a toast to the Irish people, and I'll quote a short stanza from G.K. Chesterton about the Irish people.
Oh, I'm ready.
It says, "For the great Gaels of Ireland are the men that God made mad, for all their wars are merry, and all their songs are sad."
That's awesome.
So to the Irish people, I love you, and I'm sorry that you ruined the church.
Years? Question mark?